Now, the rape gang scandal is tragic, and as we heard yesterday, it is still going on. But today we saw cheap parliamentary manoeuvring to exploit it. To be clear, the Tory plan was to make Labour MPs vote against an amendment which, if carried, would destroy the education bill, so they could later attack them for voting for a cover-up on child abuse. Labour's reply was that Tory MPs doing this would be voting down a bill designed to protect vulnerable children like Sarah Sharif. It's an absolute mystery, isn't it, that politicians aren't more highly regarded in this country. Since MPs from all sides say they want to hear from the survivors, however, let's take them at their word and talk first tonight to somebody who was a victim of the Rotherham gangs. We're not going to identify her or show her face or give her name, but we're calling her Liz. She spoke with me this afternoon about what happened to her, and I should just warn that some of you may find the details distressing.
Obviously, I'm an historic survivor of CSE in Rotherham, and I was 14 and I was groomed, abused and raped under the eyes of the local authority and South Yorkshire police that turned a blind eye. I was initially groomed by a woman that was known to the authorities years and years before I came along.
So this has been, I'm sorry to jump in, this has been somebody who'd been going around grooming young girls for some time. The authorities knew about her but did nothing.
Yeah, they did nothing. And basically, the intelligence that they had on her was she'd gone around grooming and luring young girls into exploitation under 9 different aliases in 1999, which is 5 years before myself. South Yorkshire Police had shut down a fake rape crisis hotline that she'd made. And Rotherham Borough Council actually gave her a contract to pick young children up from school.
Good God.
Through a taxi service. So all this was known to them prior me ever being exploited, basically. And still under that information, they never acted. It evolved really quickly for myself, where I was actually locked in her property for 10 weeks. The police knew where I were. My parents called the police over 200 times, and then one day something changed. It wasn't that any of those adults that were taking part in the abuse of myself was arrested. It was actually my dad for trying to save me. So there was quite a big, significant event there. This went on for 4.5 years.
And can I ask you, I'm sorry about this, but who were the men? What were the men like who were abusing you, who were presumably sexually abusing you and raping you?
They were Pakistani males.
Of what sort of ages?
Well, when I was 14, my perpetrator was 18 years older than myself.
Oh.
So he'd have been around 36 to 38.
Awful.
Yeah.
Awful.
Yeah.
And your own situation at that time, were you living with your parents and you were simply grabbed from the street? How did that happen?
How did it happen? Basically, I was going through an hard time when I went to secondary school. Didn't quite fit in and things, so I started throwing it in. And I just came across her on the street, and she literally made me feel like I fitted in somewhere. And the initial thing, how she got me there, was she said that her daughter were going through the same thing. And so I went naively, because I was from a sheltered background, you know, just a normal working family. Never experienced anything like what had, like, spark suspicion type of thing. And I went naively to the flat, and there was another girl there. Unknown to me, I thought she was her daughter, but she wasn't. And then I was still going home at this point, and then one day I went over, obviously, so I didn't have to go to school, and that girl were gone. And I still, to this day, literally, she'd swapped her, but still to this day, I don't know where that girl is. I don't know whether she's alive or anything.
And then presumably the woman who was grooming you sort of changed character, changed her tone when you were effectively abducted and locked in her house.
Absolutely. She went from this making herself look like she was kind and caring and a mother figure to quickly turning cold and calculating.
And I don't want to go into the details on the radio about exactly what you suffered, but it went on for many weeks.
During those 4.5 years, because that's how long
4.5 years? 4.5? Jesus.
Not obviously in that flat with different perpetrators, 4.5 years worth of abuse. I was drugged, raped, trafficked and abused in the most horrendous ways, and all I can describe it is it's your worst nightmare times 100.
Do you think the people doing this regarded you as being human?
Absolutely not. How can anybody inflict that sort of torture and pain on a child? I still, that is something that I struggle still with to this day, is how could anybody do that to a child?
And I understand you went to the authorities, and your parents presumably went to the authorities, your dad did, and nobody would listen. What were they saying to you when you went to them?
I just got put down as a child with behavioural problems, a child that was looking for this attention of these older men. It's wrote down, and all I got was that it was basically normalised, and that these men were my boyfriends, and I was going out looking for that. And the only reaction that I used to get were when they were sat in meetings that they were counting down the days until I was 18. I mean, one entry in my files basically said we've only got 64 days until she's 18.
And then she's off our books, as it were. We don't have to worry anymore.
And that was the attitude of them.
Now, you are one of 1,400 women and young girls that we know were abused in Rotherham.
Yeah.
There's been a report into that. There's been the national report, the J report. Do you think there's a case now for another national inquiry specifically on grooming gangs?
I absolutely, when we look at the ICSA, it didn't really cover grooming gangs. Rotherham itself has had 11 reports into it, and Telford's had their report, and Rochdale. By looking at it, by presenting it as single inquiries, we're seeing not the extent. We're not getting no data from that. We're getting nothing that we can put into for change. And it's important that we all get the answers, and I'm not begrudging those people from the post office scandal, let's say, but why aren't we have one as well? We deserve that. It's been estimated that there's 250,000 victims across this country. Don't we deserve at least to know is how we can stop it, what has been the issue, make change? I think it's so important.
Yeah.
Because we don't treat it as what it is, and it's organised crime.
And it's been said that without an inquiry, the right people won't be held to account. Who do you think are the kind of people, I'm not asking for names, obviously, the kind of people you think should be held to account for what happened to you?
Police officers, MPs at the time of council officials, in a way, at the NHS as well, because people were going in there and having multiple abortions and things like that. Schools.
It's been.
And that's it.
Sorry, go on.
But just anybody who turned a blind eye, and I think it's important that we get that out there so it stops others from failing.
What you said about joining the dots between inquiries was very much what Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative leader, was saying in the House of Commons today. But Keir Starmer came back and he said that another inquiry done properly would last another 7 years. It would go on, and that would just delay everything, and that he wanted to respond to the suggestions, the proposals from the J inquiry and do that first. Why do you think he's wrong about that?
The issue being is, right, all right, the length of the time for a new report would be lengthy, but myself, I'm 38 next. I've been living this since being 14, so another few years wouldn't do any harm. I think if I'm going to be putting my real opinion out there, is I think he's afraid of what's going to come back on him. As well. I think there's a large reluctance on that. I also believe that they don't want the true answers to be known, because every town and city that's been affected by this, which is over 50 towns and cities, have all been Labour-controlled authorities.
So there's a party political point to this, you think? Elon Musk has come under a lot of criticism, including from me at times, from the way he has spoken about this. But we're talking about this today, as we were talking yesterday and the day before, because of his interventions. So are you pleased that he said what he said? Absolutely.
I'm not saying that he's right all the time, but he's amplified and got our voices heard. You know, the amount of support that we've received, and literally the thing that he's gave the public, you know, we haven't seen that before. We've seen a huge turn. I've been campaigning for 10 years and I've never seen anything like this in the last few days. It's been absolutely out of this world.
Well, Liz, I know it's very difficult to talk about these things. I'm really grateful you've come on to LBC and shared your experience and your views about that. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.